Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm EVM and today I want to talk about Tesla's Sentry mode and how it's a brilliant piece of kit. For those that are unaware, it's essentially lots of dash cams, if you will, around the car. Only it's better because you've got ones on the side as well as ones at the front and the back. However, it comes at a cost. I mean, financially. But it also, I've come to realise over the last week or two, it's something you can't fully rely on. Now, before anybody from the Tesla's fan club jumps up and down in the comment section, again, I'm saying this is a good thing. It was never designed from the outset to do this feature. We're fully aware of that, but people use it as it's advertised. Sentry mode, it records things that are done to your car, but it's a greedy thing. It's an expensive thing to run, it turns out, at least for some people. And again, I can't really rely on it as much as I'd want to. Now, let me give you this scenario, which, again, I don't know why this hasn't occurred to me before, but this is what has really highlighted it in my head. We went a few weeks ago on holiday. We drove to Manchester Airport and left the car there for 7 days. Well, 7 to 8, something like that, give or take a few hours. We left on 100%, which is something I don't normally do, but I thought, well, Sentry mode does use energy. I want it to, in an airport car park, to be on, and well, I'll charge it to full. We got to Manchester Airport on 75%. So I'm thinking, right, anything above 35%, I'm more than happy with. I can easily get home using that. Then when I was on holiday, I thought, you know, it's been 3 days. Let me check what the car's doing. I'd not touched the app in all that time. In fact, I didn't really have a signal out there and had to rely on the hotel's free Wi-Fi. I ain't paying for data roaming. But when I did check, after 3 days, the car had gone from 75% to 46%. It has used, near as makes no difference, 10% per day, or roughly 30% in 3 days. Now, before anybody says maybe it was very busy, lots of cars going past, no, it wasn't. Well, we've just arrived back in England. The car's there. It's the quietest part of the car park, I suppose. It's floor 7 of 8, so it's hardly a main street with lots of people walking past it constantly, but the battery is now on 45%. Oh God, I'm really tired. So yeah, there you go. It's just hungry. Now, after we turned Sentry mode off, after 3 days, the preceding 4 and a bit days after that, it went from 46% to 45%. It had used just 1% in 4 days, whereas with Sentry mode on, it used, near as damn it, 30%. There was no preconditioning or overheat protection or any of that. It was undercover, it wasn't that hot, and it certainly wasn't cold. So all of the energy, and I've checked, came from using the Sentry mode. There might have been 1 or 2 other things, don't get me wrong, but ultimately it used 1% in 4 days as opposed to 29% in 3. That tells me everything I need to know. Sentry mode is greedy. Now, this is the standard range plus, which means in percentage terms, I use 10%, but in actual electricity consumption, it's using roughly 5 kilowatt hours worth of electricity. 5. To put that into context, the average UK household, and this is the entire house, ovens, dishwashers, lights, TVs, everything, over a 24-hour period, the average UK household uses 8. This is using 5, near as damn it anyway, using Sentry mode alone. I mean, how is that even possible? It's possible because the hardware is using, I guess, roughly 200 watts continuously. And I'm fine with that because I knew it beforehand. I just didn't realise for some reason, even though I've had the car for 3 years, how greedy and how much it's costing me. The current price in the UK, or rather what it will be in July, the price cap is 30p per kilowatt hour. That's costing you £1.50 a day if you used it 24 hours a day. So the worst case scenario. That means we're looking at, in fact, what are we looking at? Wow, not far off £46 a month to run Sentry mode continuously, which over a typical 3-year ownership period, if you look at it from that perspective, is £1,642, and that's based at the price cap, which is now lower than it was, just to have Sentry mode on 24 hours a day. Now, don't get me wrong, you might not have that. I don't. It's got a great feature in it, which means that you can exclude certain locations. Mine goes, you're at home, I'm going to turn Sentry mode off because, well, I don't need it, it's in the garage, and I've got my own CCTV as well. So therefore, it's not being used, for me personally at least, for quite a lot. I have done a few calculations trying to figure out how much Sentry mode I use, because we're in a weird situation where both me and my wife can use this for commuting. She works in the evenings and nights, I work during the day. So some days it's out for 19, 20 hours. Some days it's not out at all, on a Saturday or a Sunday maybe. And sometimes, like when we go away, visit people, it's on 24/7. So I reckon that we use at least, it's probably more than this really, but at least 12 hours a day of Sentry mode, as in when it's not at home, which is just halving what I've just told you. So we're looking at £850 over the 3 years I've had this, just to run Sentry mode in electricity costs. For me personally, it's a bit less because I'm on a time of day tariff, but you get my point. In consumption terms, this is a very, very greedy monster. Tumble dryers, for example. If you use a tumble dryer, an older one anyway, it can use 4 kilowatt hours worth of electricity. Now that's seen as very expensive for UK households, given what's happened with the energy crisis and so forth. Don't use your tumble dryer unless you absolutely have to. It's using 4 kilowatt hours every time you use it, typically once per day. This is using 5. Now, yeah, I know it's an expensive car and you can afford to do it, but my point is, I don't think many people account that for its running costs. We'll look at the miles per kilowatt hour or the watt hours per mile and forget about the fact that Sentry mode has supped the equivalent of roughly 20 miles per day if you used it 24 hours a day anyway. You might say, well, like, it's charging, I don't care, it's not a problem, I'd rather have it than not. And I would rather have that as an option, because I could turn it off, I could turn it on, it's up to me. But what if you can't charge from home and you rely on the public charging network, which is very expensive at the moment? Or you just have to park on a street, so therefore, logically, you want it on 24 hours a day, because someone could accidentally prang it. I mean, the whole Tesla keying side of thing that you see on YouTube, that seems to be a very American thing. I've not heard of, well, I've heard of people in the UK getting the car's keyed, don't get me wrong, but targeting Teslas specifically seems to be a very American sort of problem. So I'm not too concerned about the side cameras, although it's a really big bonus, don't get me wrong. It's the front and back, especially as I always reverse into a parking spot. I want the front at a wide angle covered. So I'm in a sticky situation here where I'm going, well, how do I get round this? How can I stop not being able to use Sentry mode? Because as I found out when we were on holiday, after 3 days of the 7 we were away, I had to turn it off. A security function is only good if it's in use. It turns Sentry mode off at 20%, which has meant that after a 10-hour flight and the time difference, and you could see how tired we were, I don't want to have to go X miles in the wrong direction to charge up and then drive home. I just want to get back. But it was an option, I suppose. I could have run it down. Even then, it wouldn't have done the full week because it had hit 20% in about 2.5 days after the 3. If you go away for 2 weeks, not a chance. And before anyone says only parking places with charging, where does that possibly exist? Where you could use a charger for 1 or 2 weeks at a time. Even in an airport, they might charge it at the end before you get back, but they ain't going to leave it on charge the entire time. But in the real world, if I use 45% to get somewhere and then 45% obviously to get back again, I can't use Sentry mode at all. I might only be visiting someone for half a day, but I have to leave it off because I don't want to risk getting back on such a low percentage, or just not at all if there's a diversion or whatever. Is it a good thing? Yes, it's a fantastic piece of kit. Could it be optimized? Well, logically, yes. The next version, is it version 4 of the hardware, I think is out now, or it's very nearly coming out, but they don't seem to be too bothered about it in terms of consumption. I guess they'd have to bypass the main processing unit or the computer, whatever you want to call it, the main hardware, to just record the footage to make it more efficient. So how do we solve this problem? How can we get around the fact that, well, a dash cam doesn't see everything, it doesn't see the side of the car, But a Sentry mode can't be used all the time either. And if you do use it all the time, it's going to cost you hundreds of pounds a year. Well, I suppose the only solution to this is to have both. That way, at my scenario, when we were at the airport, after 3 days, the Sentry mode gets turned off and the cameras, the dash cameras, will carry on, because they would be plumbed into the 12-volt system, which is topped up by the traction battery and would be running for many, well, weeks probably, or even longer, because they use a tiny amount of electricity compared to the Sentry mode. And that's the difference. It's power consumption that I'm bothered about here, not where it comes from. The 12-volt will just keep going as long as I want it to, because again, it's topped up by the big battery underneath. So yeah, it's just that really. It's a great feature. Just be aware that it could, if you forget about it or you just don't realise, end up depleting the battery to the point where you have to charge just to get back, which is fine, but it could be immensely inconvenient, especially on the public charging network, which thankfully us Tesla owners don't need to use. Yep, smug mode. It's the reason I kept this car, as I've said many times, purely for that charging network. But when you want to get home, you want to get home. Right, so there we go. What do you do? Is there anyone out there that has a Tesla with a traditional dash cam in it because of this? Is there anyone out there that has a Tesla that cannot charge from home and essentially has to disable it? Because if you come away after a 2-day weekend and go back to work again, it's dropped 20%. And as you can't charge at home, that would really seriously affect how far you can go. That's 40 miles, give or take, on my car. That will affect the cost, it will affect the usability, and if you get to the point where you have to turn it off, it then becomes unreliable. Again, the security system that's the best isn't any good if it's not turned on. So you look forward to the inevitable barrage of Tesla people in the comment section, but seriously, don't just think of excuses, think of ways around it. That's all I'm asking for. I'm aware of the problem, and it is a problem, but how would we get around it? Again, for me, only having both options, a dash cam and the Sentry mode, is the only real way. But then you think, what's the point in having Sentry mode? I might as well just save hundreds of pounds a year and have the dash cam. But then sod's law, something will happen to the side of the car that it doesn't catch. Right, I'm done. Thank you for watching, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please do subscribe. I mean, seriously, it really does help the channel out. And if you want to become a member for 99p, then click the join button. You get members only videos occasionally, members only live stream once a month, and you will get the videos on Sunday instead of the Friday videos, so you get them much earlier. So thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon.